Hello, welcome to another episode of Flying High with Flutter. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. Today I'm with Bart and Rafael, two engineers from Buzz. Is it Buzz or Join Buzz? I always see the two words. It should be Buzz, right?
It's Buzz.
But you can find us at joinboss.com though. It's finding domains can be a little bit hard. So boss, as you may expect, boss.com was already taken. So we go by joinboss.com.
Yeah, that's the part that always confused me for quite some time, but I think I have it down now. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves and what you do over at Buzz?
For sure. I can start. So I'm a software engineer, as you said, at Boss. I work from Spain, but Boss is originally a Swedish startup, and we all work remotely. So that's a cool part. I do front-end development at Bus. We both also do back-end development at Bus because we use Serverpod, which, as you may know, it's a backend tool that you can basically write in Dart. So we both do a lot of backend and front-end development. And yeah, really excited to talk Flutter and talk a little bit about our product as well.
Yeah, and I'm Bart. I'm also a software developer here at Buzz. I'm also doing some front-end work and some back-end work with Serverpod and of course Flutter. And yeah, I'm excited to speak about Buzz.
Yeah, Buzz has been, well, quite buzzing along, I think, with all the work you guys have been doing, right? You initially, I think, was only web when you first started off. Is that right?
Yeah, it was we kind of pivoted a bit. We started doing a tool that was basically a virtual version of your office. So if you wanted to tap in someone's shoulders, you could contact them immediately. You could do audio calls, video calls, and we used it was also a Flutter application, and we used a lot of real time communications for that. But basically, there were a couple of things that made us pivot into this new tool that we're using. We're building it in Flutter for macOS, and now we're also supporting Windows. And basically, we pivoted a lot, and we're no longer doing video calls or audio calls, but we're sort of showing you what your day looks like and what your tasks in GitHub are, what your calendar looks like, and what your teammates are up to as well. So it's a little bit more of a tool that shows you in one click what your day looks like and what your teammates are up to.
Yeah, I saw that. You're really integrating to different calendars and also I think GitHub and maybe some other source controls, right? So how does this work? How do you get all the integrations going? Is everything running locally, or how does everything kind of work?
Yeah. Mostly the integrations are so for the calendar. For now, it's just using the Google Calendar API, and we have a server on using Serverpod, which uses the Google API. It has all the clients included in the Serverpod framework to access the calendar API. So we can just use that to fetch calendars of people periodically every or 30 seconds or every minute, and then just using real-time communication which is also included in Serverpod framework. We can just show the calendar for users. And for GitHub, we are also directly communicating with the GitHub API for now. So there's nothing fancy, I would say, about it. We are not using any external third-party service that integrates with multiple other services, but we are using APIs directly from Google and from GitHub.
And Slack as well. We also have a Slack integration which allows you to sync your status based on your calendar events, or also if you're in a huddle in Slack, you could also sync that as your status in Boss. You can also just click on someone's profile to go and DM them in Slack, which is also quite handy.
Okay, I'm just trying to think. So this is actually aimed at developers, right? For having developers talk with, is it only with each other, or is it a whole company-wide kind of thing? Because it seems like it's really more developer focused when I saw a lot of the features.
Yeah, ideally it's for product teams, but we understand that developers are we're seeing a few pain points that we think that can really help developers. So many of our features are currently aimed at developers, but we actually want to have product teams and basically different types of teams work together. So not all of our features are developer focused, but I guess our GitHub integration is quite yeah, it's trying to solve one of the biggest pain points that we see, and it's like GitHub notifications. I don't know if you've recently used GitHub for professional work, but you get like 100 emails just with every change, every comment. It's like email hell, and we're trying to like solve this and think of a better way of showing the current status of your pull request and to see basically notifications when someone like really non-intrusive notifications when someone updates something, and if it's relevant to you, we'll show you a notification. Otherwise, you can just see the list of things that you have. That part is really developer focused, and also like one thing it happens to us as devs is that when you have to join a calendar event, sometimes you like have to context switch a lot and go to like through your tabs just to see where you have your calendar, your Gmail, and just like join it from there. Another thing we added is just notifications for when your event is about to start, like 2 minutes, or you can actually set the amount of minutes that you want to be notified that your event will start, and you can just join it from there. It's also quite handy because like sometimes you have a lot of things during your day and you really don't know because you're like focused at coding, focused in coding. So it's a quite a handy tool. So I guess we're not like 100% going at the developer target, but in some way, like our features are really convenient for developers.
Yeah, like one part of like the GitHub integration, like for example, I find useful for myself. It's like Rafa mentioned, it's just like the list of PRs I'm currently working on, and I can see like all the approvals of people in my current organization. I can see like all the comments, incoming comments for my PRs, but it's not only related to like my work, but I can also check some of the work done by my teammates, right? So if I'm an engineering manager, for example, at a product team, I could like when there's a stand up or when I want to see the progress of my team, I can just glance at all the open PRs within my organization, just check which ones are idle, which ones are like pending for like a lot of time or need approval. Like there's a lot to it, like just to understand like what's going on in your organization work.
Now, I saw, like you said before, you're trying to kind of cut down on the emails. Do the emails still come, or do those get silenced so that you only get notifications for GitHub?
They don't get silenced automatically. It's a possibility that we would add such an option to like silence your GitHub emails and just rely on bots. But for now, you would have to do that manually. But it's just not. It's just easier to find the current changes by just having them in a list or by getting notified in those subtle notifications. But they don't actually get turned off. You could just like ignore them or just like archive them or something similar. It's an interesting possibility though to be able to like disable them from the tool. We'll probably look into that. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, because I saw that's one of the things you're trying to promote is like, okay, cut off the email part and just get the notifications, right? Now, are you limited to only one GitHub organization?
For now, yeah, we decided that this is going to be the case, that we are showing only in the context of one organization, but we are looking into expanding into personal repositories as well, or like multiple ones as well.
Yeah, you could also connect the tool to different organizations, and then you there's actually a setting for changing which one you want to see. So if you're part of or two organizations, you can actually go into settings and swap, just switch to see the ones that are relevant to your current. Say for some people work like one day for this company, the next day like Mondays they do. If you're a consultant, maybe your Mondays you do one startup, Tuesdays you do a larger company, Wednesday you go back to the startup. Then it makes sense for you to be able to switch it, and it's a possibility that we're currently offering.
Yeah, because the one thing that I have is that I'm doing several different projects at the same time, and so like one maybe I don't have much work to do on, so I'm doing something else, and all of a sudden I get a PR I have to review from another organization. So if I need to keep switching to see what's going on, that can be a little bit annoying. It'd be nice to be able to have all of your orgs at one place because even yeah, when you run a consultancy, right? A lot of times, like I get a separate email for a client because they want all the stuff to be on their domain, a separate GitHub account could be, and separate like everything, right? Just to kind of keep things kind of clean. And so, not having all of those together would be a little bit tricky for some consulting companies, as I could see. Because I know, like every time I start a project, I got a new email. every time. So in order to handle the emails, I have Mailplane, and I have just one Mailplane client open up. All my emails are there, and I can see all stuff coming in. That works out for me. But it'd be really cool to have all of the orgs, everything kind of like, it'd be cool to have like a focus view, so you have like one org and like your email and all that stuff in one. But if you can have like a combined thing, that would be really nice to have.
Yeah, it's something we're looking into, and also we've recently added this basically collapsible panels for your calendar or your personal PRs, or like the PRs that are relevant to you, just like the open PRs in your team, and you can actually collapse them and just hide what you don't need at the time. So in the case that you mentioned, eventually if we add like several organizations, we could probably go that route of just like letting you collapse what's not relevant to you at the moment and show you just the organization that you want to have open. You could just easily collapse them or expand them as needed.
Yeah, that probably could work. Yeah, everything kind of started off with, like we talked at the beginning, we start off at web, right? I think you guys were the first ones using Serverpod before Serverpod kind of really came about, or at least it was like the kind of like the guinea pig. Like how was that working with Serverpod so far in the beginning of when it was starting off?
In the beginning, it was a little bit easier as we had Victor's. Victor was part of the team for a while, and he built most of. Yeah, we were sort of the guinea pig for Serverpod, and like as we had like more access to like being able to just document what we wanted and how like what kind of feature we wanted, and basically have Victor build it into Serverpod was really convenient. But it's been growing and maturing, and right now it's a really convenient tool for us. It's like just not having to worry about data serialization and not having to worry about like converting everything back and forth is really convenient for us.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like to Serverpod like that we are using, and like implementing all of that parts separately would take a lot of time. Like there is support like for file uploading or like real time communication that we are using within Bus. There's caching like with Redis, or like it includes authentication with Google, Apple, email, etc. Yeah, it's just very useful like to get started having all of that functionality built in. And it's also a full stack Dart on like both the backend and frontend, so it's easy to switch contexts between the backend and frontend part.
Yeah, and do you guys actually co-locate your code? Because I've seen like Victor kind of promotes that co-location of code where you have like your client and your server code in like the same repo. Do you have the same style or no?
We have a mono repo in which we like inside of one of the directories we have the server, and then that auto generates the client, and then we can consume that other directory from our application, right? So basically we just work mono repo, we create everything in the server that like creates a client. This is like one of the features that Serverpod offers, and then we just use that client as a package in our front-end application.
Okay, so you do have the mono repo. Does that actually cause any problems, or do you feel that that actually works out very well?
I think it works well because you can just open inside of. I use VS Code for development. You can just open the directory that you're working on and just work from that one. So when we're working on the front end application, everything is quite smooth. And then we have a Docker container for running, the server, and then we just switch to that when we want to build a feature in the backend. Yeah, I think it's like I just find it really fast. You can just it's really easy to context switch like that.
But it's like also at the same time when we are using monorepo, let's say that like there is a change to Serverpod, or there is a change to the shared client between frontend and backend, and like when there are GitHub actions, we can just validate. For example, if there's a change to a shared package, like we just build and test every other package we have, right? So we can build and test frontend, we can build and test the backend, and we can build and test the shared package, because we know that all of them depend on the same kind of shared contracts, right? Yeah, so it's also like a useful thing that it lives in a single place.
Now, does this mean that you guys are running some type of like full end integration test because you have Serverpod and the other one together, so you can really, turn on Serverpod, maybe seed some data, turn on your app, run through some scenarios, and then spin it down? Do you do something like that or no?
I believe we do have a few integration tests, like for Serverpod, but most of them are just unit tests for now. For Serverpods, like separately for Serverpod or the front end app. Yeah, we don't have that many integration tests.
Now, for the current web app, I mean, is that still running right now?
We actually phased it out. I would say 2 weeks ago, perhaps. We just use it for like internal stuff. But yeah, the web app is no longer live. We're just relying on the desktop tool now and just going the Flutter for desktop way, which is a whole other story. It's quite interesting.
You can't say some story is quite interesting and not tell me the story, right?
Well, it's just our app is really specific in the requirements, right? So it's not just a matter of opening a window and have everything live inside of that window, but we created a menu bar application. So just setting everything up for like how Windows should behave and how like we should not only support our like home like boss window, but also if we have settings and notifications, we had to basically go ahead and modify a few packages just to get it working as we wanted. So things like the app hiding when you click outside of it, those things were just not built into any plugins or any packages that we could use. So it was quite a challenge to like customize everything so that it worked how we needed it to.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that's nice about the web part is that you can freely update, and people kind of have to almost use the new version, right? Unless, of course, they just don't refresh their page. Now, with the desktop app, doesn't that kind of bring some problems where you may have some bugs and people refuse to update the app?
Oh yeah, definitely. So we actually, so the process like of deployment and distributing the app on desktop is like a bit more complex than, for example, on mobile as well. Because apart from signing the app and pushing the app, you also need to go through the process of notarizing the app, which is just checking for malicious software within your macOS application. And then you have to staple the app as well. I know Rafa built all of that workflow and spent like a lot of time just preparing the deployment of macOS app. But there's a few steps involved there, right? And then in the end, when you notarize the app, staple the app, sign the app, etc., you can distribute the app either to like Mac App Store, or you can just distribute the executable file on your website. And that's what we are doing at the moment. And as you mentioned, like with the updates, before we didn't have any like automatic updates for the app. If you publish your app to Mac App Store, you have automatic updates of the app by default, right? Because it includes those automatic updates functionality. But if you are going with the way of publishing your app on your own website, then you need to provide your own like mechanism for updating the app. And it wasn't very clear at the beginning, but we decided to go with the Sparkle project. There's like a tool for releasing the app updates, and then there's an SDK for both macOS and Windows. For Windows, it's called WinSparkle, which would automatically check if there's like a new update and update the app. So it's a bit more effort just to achieve the automatic update of the app with macOS or Windows.
Now, how do you handle people who just kind of refuse to update the app?
But that's that's a little bit of a pain for us because as like we share the same classes between the client and the server. Sometimes like when we modify things and we want to deprecate them, it's quite hard to deprecate because we're not 100% sure that all of the users are in the same version. As you would in when like using Flutter Web, you would know that like everyone is running the latest version. That is not the case, and we've run into some issues of like trying to deprecate things and then seeing that like just something would break in like the serialization of our classes. It's a problem.
So you recognize the problem, but you don't have any kind of solid solution yet, right?
I mean, we could eventually just set the updates as mandatory and prevent users from using the application if they don't update it. But for the moment, I think our updates are not mandatory. We just have the tool for you to automatically update them, and then you would just have to restart it. It's just a second, and we believe that users
Yeah.
probably want to experiment on new features. So that's also something that, like, if it's an easy process as like we've built it to be, then we're not too worried about users staying on older versions.
Yeah, we make sure that every new API that we introduce is like backwards compatible with the previous versions of BAS. And we considered like building the mandatory flag. So like it's called critical updates in Sparkle. So it's definitely supported in Sparkle. Like we just haven't looked into building that yet. Yeah.
Now, it sounds like there's not a lot of benefits when you have web, at least for the updates part and deprecating things, right? What was the idea to say, okay, we need to go to desktop only and junk the web app, right? What was the thought process?
Yeah, basically what we wanted to build was an app that lived in your menu bar or in your taskbar, in menu bar in Windows, or in your menu bar in Mac and taskbar in Windows. So basically, it's an app that's just constantly hidden for you, and you can just click on the icon on the menu bar and you just show the application. Click on it again to hide it, and then also if you have a calendar event, it will set the status, that like the text inside of that, just by the icon as your current event. So right now I have the app open and I see that I have the meeting with you for this podcast. It's something that like would have been very challenging to do with Flutter Web, because you would also have to like wrap everything inside of Electron and build like the desktop stuff for the tray icon and then the tray manager for both Windows and Mac OS. And what we wanted to do was to have a really performant app, and we believe that like the best way to go was to just build it for the desktop and not have a wrapper around that.
Yeah, I see. So that makes sense, but I almost think that you could do most of the stuff with web because you do have push notifications within web browser, right? But that wouldn't solve issues of mobile, but you're not really focusing too much on mobile, right? Only on desktop.
For the moment, yeah. Our notifications are custom though. We used to at some point we had push notifications on web, but we changed that because we wanted to have custom design for our notifications. And also, I don't know if it happens to you, but like I get way too many push notifications on my Mac, and it's super easy to ignore them. Like I'm seeing, just like they when you use things like Slack, you just get a bunch of notifications, and sometimes they stay there for a while. And we wanted to like make them more customizable and just show them to the user in a different way. Also, like being able to have several links inside of the notifications is something that we could accomplish going the manual way. Just like we built our own solution for notifications.
Yeah, and with like having the app on the web, it's still pretty much the same problem like with searching for the calendar. Like for example, if I'm looking at the calendar events directly through the Google Calendar page, I need to open Chrome or Safari or whatever, and then open calendar page or find my GitHub page, right? So it's still searching through a lot of tabs on your system. And with the menu bar app, you just like have an instant like you're one click away from seeing your calendar or seeing pull requests. It's just like a lot easier, and you don't have to keep your browser open. It just like syncs everything in the background.
I mean, the notifications, everything like that, they look really, really native, but these are all built with widgets, or they're actually Flutter stuff, or because I'm kind of curious because it looks like real native like Mac OS stuff on the screenshots.
Yeah, we build them with Flutter, and what we do is, as we had mentioned before, we're using a package called Window Manager from the people at Lean Flutter. I think they're the original creators. Their package is quite strong and allows you to like do several modifications to like Windows inside of both Windows and Mac OS. We've modified a bit their package to so that we can basically build a transparent background for all of our windows, and then we just set the size and modify it as we need it. So it's basically just our notifications are just Flutter widgets that we've customized and just show them there. Also, we use the that window manager package with their with the modifications we've done. We can just show that on demand, and we can just customize the design of the notifications with Flutter, which is we have a great designer working with us. Shout out to Bart, by the way, and he's like so creative, and like his designs are super cool, and just being able to not depend on the native stuff, but being able to like customize the experience of like our brand in the product is really convenient for us.
Okay. Yeah. Has there been any designs that come in that you think are really like impossible to do, or because it seems like you guys are doing some really cool stuff with these windows?
We had a couple of issues with like supporting multiple windows. For example, Rafael was now exploring like the ability to do that like with the window manager package. It's like it's kind of interesting that there's like no like a recommended like way by Flutter to manage windows. There's no way to to resize windows, show multiple windows, reposition windows, and there's like a few different packages that solve that problem, but there's no like ideal way to do that, right? And we are looking into. We know that there's like a super list app, and they have their own plugin for window management. It's called Native Shell, I believe, and it has like a lot of functionality regarding the multi-window support, drag and drop, all the native platform menus, or like it offers a lot. We just haven't experimented with that yet, but it's just interesting to know that this is not such an easy thing when building the desktop app. The window management can be tricky.
Yeah, for sure. Showing two windows at the same time is like a challenge that we're currently trying to tackle. Like I've been able to show two different windows, but then you have to take into account the size and where you position them, and it's like getting the bounds of like the icon, and you can get the bounds with the from our menu icon. But then if you have multiple displays, then it may be a little bit like the bounds that you get could be swapped around, and there's a lot of um, there's a lot of things that can go wrong when building such unique tool in a sense, at least with Flutter, or for like what has been built with Flutter applications. And yeah, showing the second window has been quite the challenge, but we're sure that like either with native shell and like by researching what they've worked on, or by like adapting our own like window manager solution to that, we could probably eventually do that.
Now, is there any other kind of issues that really are painful when you're switching over to desktop from web?
Maybe one of the issues was there's no like. I'm not sure if there's like if that's an issue on web, but definitely like we don't have Flutter does not offer any like application lifecycle for desktop, right, Rafa? So we had to deal with that in a couple of ways. Like, so what I mean by that is, for example, for mobile, Flutter offers API to know when your app is getting killed or put into foreground or background. But in case of desktop, you don't have all that information. So, for example, when in our app we have like a real-time socket connection with the server, and if you close your laptop, if it goes to sleep, after some time the socket connection could break. And Flutter API does not inform us that there is like that your device was put into a sleep mode. So because of that, we had to implement like some custom logic, custom solution for listening to like application sleep states of macOS app, and just know when your device wakes up. And in that case, we can wake up the socket as well, right? So it's a bit more implementation, yeah, because Flutter does not offer that API out of the box.
Oh, that's interesting. I would have thought that they would have that because you already have that within, like you said, within iOS and Android, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's an open issue for that. I was actually looking at that yesterday. It's not supported yet, but it's on the roadmap.
Yeah, and also the life cycle seems to be a little bit different in Windows and Mac, which I mean it makes sense that it's different. But for us, it's just like that problem that Bart was mentioning about like the computer coming back from sleep, and that's mainly a problem in Mac OS. But in Windows, we've been researching and studying it and like testing it a lot, and we don't really see that problem. So it's just like maybe Windows gives a higher priority to that, yeah, to the application, than Mac OS does. So like yeah, being able to just like fetch information right after sleep, we actually had to build a method channel just to know that the computer had gone back from sleep. It's something that it's different in macOS than it is in Windows. So it would be really good that it would be really good to have like a proper life cycle documentation for both macOS and Windows, which I think they might just be different. So it may not be the same as in mobile, that like when an application is terminated, when the widget is closed. At least in the application lifecycle, it's the same for both Android and iOS. I think.
Yeah, definitely. But also, like you asked about like what was the issue with moving from web to desktop. I know you had an issue with Agora SDK, right, Rafa? When moving from between platforms.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that was quite problematic was that we were using the web application as a dependency of the desktop application, and the web application included Agora for video calling, right? So just signing all of the code inside of the pods that you use in the macOS application, like Apple wants you to sign everything, staple everything, and basically run the app inside of either a sandbox mode or a not sandbox mode. Just with being able to sign everything and add all of the required notarizations and everything required by Apple was impossible to do with this SDK. So we actually had to remove it and just stop depending on the package altogether. It's quite the challenge because like Apple really wants you to go the Mac App Store way, and for what we wanted to build, we were not sure that like having a sandbox application, which are the ones that are allowed inside of the Mac App Store, was ideal. So we had to deal with a lot of issues with just like code that you use, dependencies that you use not being properly notarized or not being properly signed. And yeah, that was a little bit of a challenge for us. Something that you don't really think about when you do Flutter web. You just like use it, and it's just the web is a little bit more permissive with that stuff.
Not even that too. Like even when you're developing, right? I mean, you don't have this signing issue until you actually go to deploy it, and then so basically you didn't discover this until you went to actually sign it, and then you're like, oh my god, this is. How do you explain to like a product manager or owner that you're running something like this?
It's quite complex because it's not something you expect at all. It's just like you think of signing the application. It's like this easy step. There's a script for it, and also like there's no like a super clear way to do that. There's like several CLI tools that you can use from Apple, but like some get deprecated super quickly, and it's like you build something and like it needs to be updated fairly quick. But yeah, it's like you expect it to be just like you use the CLI tool, you notarize everything, you sign everything, you staple everything, it just works. It doesn't just work. And then just explaining this, it's just a bunch of problems that you don't expect when just building a deployment workflow.
Yeah, like also at the same time, you talked about the sandbox mode for the app. It's like also a new keyword to know when you are building a Flutter desktop app. Like for macOS, like the app can be in the sandbox mode or in a non-sandbox mode, and Apple expects you to go with the sandbox, of course. So it's like limited in terms of permissions, like and safer. But of course, like if you want to develop some features, for example, if you want to launch the app on startup of your device, for example, you have to go with the non-sandbox mode because sandbox mode would not be supported for some reason, right? So there are certain plugins that do not work if you go with the sandbox mode, which is not ideal. But it's also similar with Windows. There are some packages that if you decide to publish your app as in the exe format or MSIX format. I'm not sure which one was it, but there's one format that is not supported by some of the packages. So you need to go with one specific format to work with some of the packages. This is also like interesting.
Oh, that's painful. So I'm guessing again, you find this out when you go to build the package, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
You just like read the documentation and it says like only this format is supported, or like you build the package and then you get the error. That's like, yeah.
The other thing that comes into mind too is like I know like whenever you want to use say your documents or your desktop folder, I think also and quite a few other folders, you have to the user has to click yes on Mac, which is a little bit annoying. Like, you know, how do you handle if somebody says no for something that you need? I mean, do you build that in? I like because I know I ran into one issue for a package where this is for iOS though, where it asks you to read some of your health data, and if you say no, even if you ask again, it's always going to return true, no matter what the user says. That basically true, like it sounds like they said yes, but that's because the answer of true is only telling you that yeah, we asked already, not yes, they gave us permission, which you'd figure that would make more sense. But actually, at that time, things may have changed since then. This was a couple of years ago, but at that time, that was the only thing you could do. You could just ask, and then they only said like if you want to know if it works or not. If you try to read data and you get no data, then you can assume that you don't have permission. It's like, well, what if they didn't move, or what if the thing didn't happen, right? You know, you have no idea.
We haven't faced any problems like that of like having to request permissions inside of macOS, but like I've seen them in iOS, and yeah, it's just like you say, it's just like you don't really know what the output is of what you're requesting, and it's I guess it's hard to really inform the user of what their next action should be, and also like I think inside of the regulations, you shouldn't really take the user to a settings page to change a setting for like permissions, which is also something that you need to take into account, because like you want to like mention that probably they need to like grant permissions again, but you shouldn't properly take them there to that like make them go to the settings application and do it manually.
You're saying you should not take them there? That didn't make sense for me to actually take them there.
Yeah, I think like in terms of the regulation, I need to reread this again, but I had read that like if the user had like declined permissions, then you should not actually take them to the settings page. Like you should like mention it or describe the problem, but you shouldn't make them yeah, change it. Like you cannot change it from code, right? And you shouldn't really take them to the settings page. It's like there's a lot of regulation like this which you need to be super careful about.
Okay. Yeah, I think what you can do is you can provide a way for them to tap to go there, but you cannot proactively just take them there when you know there's a problem. Or you have to kind of warn them, I think, right? Because at least that's what I've seen before is that even they show like a screenshot of what you need to do, or they tell you what to do, and then there's a some text or something, and it says, "Oh, tap here to take you to permissions," and then you tap on it, then it takes you over there. That's what I think I've seen. Maybe that's what the regulation is, and that makes some sense.
It's just a matter of like how you interpret it and how yeah, how you can like be legally safe from what the actual text says, right? So it makes a lot of sense that it is that you can like show it but not take them there automatically, and you need to warn them. Maybe that's the one, and I was just a little bit confused.
Yeah, it could be, or things change. I mean, they change these rules all the time, and you have to stay up to date. It's kind of annoying. And then, have you guys run into the issue where it's like you so oh, wait, you're not putting this into any of the stores, is that right? You said you're distributing everything off of your own server?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm gonna say the other thing that I run into is like, have you guys ever done an iOS store before? But you get these like it depends on what the guy feels like. So if you get a reviewer who's having a bad day, then he just denies you for something weird, and then you ask for permission or you whatever you could just maybe do nothing, and you just kind of say no, this is fine, and then like the next reviewer would be like yeah this is great, and then they just approve it. You didn't do anything other than just say check it again. or something like that? Have you guys ever had this problem before? I mean, not obviously with your app because you're not going to the store, right?
No, not with boss, but yeah, like it depends on the mood of who's checking. Like they can get you for a lot of things, and they're I think it's in the Play Store as well. They're not supposed to tell you exactly what you're doing wrong. So you have to like figure out. You'll just get like some text with like this is the regulation. This is what the regulation states, but you have to actually interpret it. And there are many teams that are like incorporating just like legal people to be able to be always compliant with this.
I did want to ask one more question about the life cycles, right? And I think what you said already makes sense, right? So, I put my laptop, I close the screen, then I open it back up like maybe a couple hours later because I'm in commute or whatever. Obviously, making a refresh of data would make sense. Is there any other life cycle that you guys hook into?
Uh, there is also, we're listening to the internet connection status, right? So before I know we were using the connectivity plus package to just like get the current connection status, whether it's like a Wi-Fi or a cellular connection. But I remember there was an issue with having VPN. So whenever you connect to VPN, the package would report that you are not connected to internet at all. So I think, Rafa, you landed on the solution that's just to use like internet connection checker, just to check like every 10 seconds or so, we would just check for the connection status by calling some known DNS providers. And then if there's no connection, or if we get back the connection, then we would reconnect the socket, right? So it's also like one mechanism.
Yeah, that was actually documented. The issue has been documented for macOS in the Connectivity Plus package. It's just sometimes, depending on the VPN that the user is using, you could get a disconnected status for their current internet connection. And it's just, yeah, it was quite problematic because we have a lot of companies trying the application who use VPNs. And yeah, we just couldn't figure out like what was going wrong here. If like we were not able to, there was something with the server, or they were. And eventually we figured out that it was probably due to the VPN just blocking them from connecting. It's a problem with that package. And yeah, the solution was that we looked at like there's a list of recommended DNS addresses that you should test just to check if the connection is stable. I think it's OpenDNS. I'm not sure if Google as well. And we just use that to figure out if the user really is or not connected to the internet instead of Connectivity Plus, which is, I guess, the most popular package for checking that.
Yeah, but behind a corporate firewall, though, sometimes you have to set the proxy in the actual application itself, though. But somehow you're able to hook into some kind of system-wide proxy all the time, or do you actually provide that, like that proxy setting for people who are in a corporate?
I don't think we've run into that yet, but when we do, we'll make sure to take that the proxy into account. I don't think we have any super corporate clients with like, but I know that they've used the VPN from their company, right? But it's just I'm not sure like how we should add that. Not a problem we've run into so far.
Okay. I mean, the other thing that what I did on my side for the mobile app is we have a WebSocket, and so if you're logged in, um, we have a WebSocket connection. If it's connected, then we put like this green ring around your avatar. And then, like, if you put your phone to airplane mode, like that's how we tested it, then that green ring would turn to a red ring because that connection obviously got severed. And then once it gets reconnected, then we go back online. So that's been helpful, at least for us, to kind of stuff. So we didn't try the internet checking thing. And I think I remember the issue about the VPN. Also, the same thing on iOS, I think. So that sounds familiar. But yeah, that's how we worked on it for our side because I did hear you guys are using WebSocket also, right?
Yeah.
So that could also be a solution too. Without, like you said, right now you're just doing a poll like every 10 seconds. You said.
Yeah, just to check if the internet connection is stable. Yeah, we just connect to a DNS. I think it's three DNSs, the recommended ones from OpenDNS and Google, and we just check that. And if we don't get a successful connection after trying, then we assume that the user doesn't have an internet connection.
Now, what could happen is that they just don't have connection to your service now. How do you handle that issue? Because that would say you're online, but you just cannot connect to the server.
Yeah, we basically, if there are issues connecting to our server specifically, we have another widget that we basically wrap, and if you can't connect to our WebSocket or can't connect to our server, we'll just show that as feedback to the user.
Yeah, we would just keep trying to reconnect every, like with some strategy, like maybe every 2 seconds or every 10 seconds. I don't remember at the moment, but we would just try reconnecting in that case.
Okay. And for the app, right, is the app mostly that like top widget bar on Mac OS, or is it actually like a real app that's windowed and everything?
So it's when you click on the menu icon, you get a small window that you can actually, in macOS you can drag and you can move. And then if you tap on the options menu, which is on the top right corner, you can actually open the settings window, which is a larger window, which looks more like a proper application. And you can also just play around with that. So we have 2 or 3 different types of smaller windows, but it's not really just the menu options that you would get on other menu bar applications. It's not just like when you right click and you get a context menu. You would actually get a window when opening an application, a small window that like hides when you click outside of it. So that's how we usually do things, and then the notifications also appear right behind the menu icon in macOS and on top of the menu icon on Windows. But yeah, we also like we encourage people to try Bus. It's like there's a lot of things that we think could be useful, especially for developers. And if you want to try it, just look us up at joinboss.com, and for sure you can test it for yourself.
I'm kind of curious. Are you guys looking to also integrate with a mobile app too? Because so many people are always out on the go or whatever. Like for me, I'm always jumping to meetings. Could be sometimes offsite, sometimes inside. I'm not always at my PC. Like, does it make sense for you guys to also invest in something like that and then start adding in like widgets for your phone with the new way you have widgets now in iOS? Is that something you're going to be taking a look at anytime soon?
I don't think that's like a priority for now, but it's definitely interesting idea to do that. Like I would see myself using that for when I'm away for sure.
Yeah, it's something we've talked about, and like with us using Flutter, it's just a matter of like deciding that we want to go that route. But it's not in our priorities for the moment. It is like if it is something we've discussed, and I think most likely we'll end up launching a mobile application as well at some point.
So pretty much the limit that's it's limitless. You just have to figure out where to spend where to prioritize, right? What to prioritize next.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you get with Flutter in the end. It's just you need to adopt a few things. I guess in our case we have an advantage over other desktop applications, and it's that we don't really have to think about responsive design too much, as our window is usually the same size. It stays the same size. So like when we're looking at what our designer has worked on, we basically just follow it pixel to pixel. And same thing for the larger setting size. We have like thing like an aspect ratio that we have to maintain, and then we just keep that. Also for notifications, it's quite similar. We know the exact size that the window is going to be, so that part is quite convenient for us. If we go the mobile way, we also need to figure out like how this content will look like on mobile screens.
Yeah, that is a problem too. Yeah, I understand. Well, it's good that you have that small window, right? It makes life easier. So that is nice.
Yeah, and it's something you can access at any point. I think that's like one of the biggest advantages. It's just like it's right there. You check it when you want. You close it when you don't need it anymore, and then it's always there silently. And when you want to check if you have meetings that day, or if you want to check what your PR looks like right now, or if you have a PR to review, you can just open it real quick. If you want to check where your teammates are up to, you can just, it's like 2 clicks away, and you don't really have to like find that specific tab when you have where you have your calendar, or where you have your PR, or if you have your uh like that's something I do sometimes. It's just like I get my pull request in like 5 different tabs, and you don't really have to like tab browse just to get to where you want. It's like everything at a click.
What's next on the horizon for features coming to Buzz?
Yeah, one for sure is when we were talking about being able to see a second window. What we want to do with that is show um, your teammates like public events in their calendar, and also like the pull requests that they've been assigned, the pull requests that they're working on. So being able to see what your teammates are up to more specifically is something that we're currently working on, and I think it's going to be one of the features that we launch fairly soon.
Yeah, there's also a part of the GitHub integration that we want to get improved. So we are now getting as much feedback from users as we can, just to understand like what's needed to show, and like maybe some PR analytics would be interesting to know, like how much time it takes, for example, for the whole work to get approved, to get reviewed, to get merged, things like that. Like we are looking into understanding what's needed for better productivity, I guess.
Yeah, I can imagine that there'd be a lot of managers who want to know how long things are taking because they always want to know where's my money going. If I pay X, what's the output of my X? And if I times that by 2, there's always this kind of problem that you're gonna have, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Also in that line, I guess for product teams, eventually we will probably add integrations to like Jira and other like task management. Well, I don't know if you could call them task management, but agile and Kanban solutions, so that like you can see what your current tickets are, and you can see what everyone is working on. That's also a feature that we may be working on yeah, maybe releasing in the near future if all goes well.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. I mean, is there something else that we should know more about what's going on with Buzz before we sign off? I think we're approaching the end of our time now.
No, we would just like invite you, as I said, to test the application, and yeah, if you want to see something different built with Flutter, go ahead and test it. Joinboss.com. If you want to reach us at any time, if you have any problems with it, if you just want to try it, just either download the application or contact us. And yeah, for sure, we're always happy to answer all of your questions.
What if people in the audience want to get in touch with you guys to hear more, or maybe they want to exchange some more information about, Flutter desktop development or things like that? How can they get in hold of you?
Sure. So my personal Twitter account is at Ortiz Zableh. Sorry, ORTIZ ZABLEH. You can follow me on Twitter, and you can follow Boss at let me check, at join Boss underscore. Bart, if you have your Twitter account?
I have updated my name to include my Twitter account. It should be B and then my last name here. I'm happy to talk about any Flutter development, or just if you have any questions about Bass, or if you want to try out the app, I'm open to discussions.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for Bart's Twitter account, it's want to spell it out. It's BSELWESIUK.
Yes,
Oof, that's a mouthful.
that is, I know.
Awesome. Yeah, it was great having you guys on. I didn't realize there's so many things lacking in desktop. I always heard that desktop is pretty like they say it's production ready, right? I mean, I guess having lifecycle hookings is not going to stop everything, but I was just imagining since we already have that in Flutter for mobile, it just makes sense that we'd have it for desktop. I'm just surprised it's not there. I mean, web I can understand a little bit, but why would it be lacking in desktop? It's just strange.
It's quite stable, as we mentioned, like to build apps in Flutter for desktop, but it's just lacking some APIs. You can get around that, so that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I guess our case also was quite specific, as our application is not just a regular window application, but we're just building a menu bar app, which is, yeah, it comes with its set of challenges, as I mentioned before.
Yeah, but waking from sleep and pulling data seems very normal, right? I mean, I background apps all the time on well, you have to on your phone, right? So of course that makes sense, but not having that on desktop, I mean, I guess it's not a showstopper. It's just seems a little bit strange that it's not in there. But I mean, there's just too many things to port over. So I guess there's not going to be feature parity for everything, right?
Yeah, it's something you would expect for sure. It's just yeah, in our case, it's just like some information wasn't getting fetched as soon as you open it, and we had to come up with this method challenge for calling that basically as it wasn't built in.
Well, it's good to hear. I'm happy to hear your guys' side. I learned a lot today about what's possible with desktop app in Flutter. So it's good to hear your frustrations, and finally solving it has made my life easier for the future if this ever comes up for me again. I appreciate you, the blood and sweat and tears from your side. And I'll be having tears of joy when I zoom past these issues now.
For sure, Alan. Thank you very much for having us.
I thank you guys for coming on. It's been a pleasure to hear about your switch from web to desktop. You don't hear that too often. Usually people go from desktop to web because there's less issues certain in packaging, etc. Right? But it's interesting to hear you guys go the other way around.
Yeah. Thank you very much for hosting.
Much appreciated. Thanks for coming on.